Welcome to Money, Manifestation, and Business, the podcast that shows you how to use your energy, intention, and consciousness to reprogram your money mindset, unleash a new level of possibility, and create a life and business that lights you up. I'm your host, Jamie Berman, and I invite you to join me each week for a dose of inspiration, coaching, and teachings to help you rewrite your money story, create abundance on your terms, and grow your business in a way that's fully aligned for you. This is going to be so much fun. Let's dive in. We're going to talk about manifestation and how you can bring this superpower into your business and into your life so that you can let go of striving so hard, trying to force results, hustling to make things happen. And you can relax a little bit and lean into more trust, believing that the journey is going to unfold. All right. So in this episode, I want to talk a little bit about how infusing manifestation with my business has made a massive, massive difference for me and many, many of my clients. But I also want to give you some simple steps so that you can start manifesting not only in your business, but any area of your life. Manifestation is so much fun. And what I really love about it is that it doesn't matter if you're religious, if you're not religious, if you're more scientific, if you consider yourself woo-woo or not. This is something, and these are practices that you can bring into your life in addition to whatever you believe. And it's something that I encourage you to just play with and just try on and not to take too seriously. I want to share a little bit about how manifestation has changed the game with me in my business. So let me give you a little bit of backstory. I found manifestation when it's hard to say exactly when it was because I feel like I've always been attracted to spiritual teachings, to universal laws. And I've always been I remember even whenever I was little, I would go with my mom to the houses that she would clean. Like if I was sick or had off school, I would go to the houses and we'd turn on Oprah. And I just loved watching the interviews with people like Wayne Dyer and stuff like that, and Carolyn Mays. And I soaked it in even as a kid. And I remember when I was 11 years old, I was at my grandma's house. And she was also, a very spiritual person. She loved Oprah, read all the books in Oprah's book club, or she would buy them. And she had a book on intuition. And I remember reading through that entire book and it just felt like it clicked. It felt like it was just yeah, this makes sense. And I was 11 years old. So all of this started really young, but it was after college that I started really getting into it. Because I graduated in 2009 was when I graduated, which was when we were in a total recession, right? And there was the housing crisis. And I just remember people were like, you're never going to get a job. Oh my gosh, the economy is so bad. And I was like, oh my gosh. And of course, I took on all of those beliefs. So I didn't even really try. I just decided I'm going to go get a pretty simple job, or I think I actually just kept working where I was working in college. So I was working in retail and just kept my job in retail. And I remember I had to move back in with my parents. I moved from my college dorm back in with my parents, lived in the basement. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, something's got to change. And my mom had all of these books, personal development books, and I would just pick them up and start reading them. And I remember reading things like Wayne Dyer, because I had already connected with him on Oprah, and started learning about manifestation and the power of your mind and the power of setting intentions and visualizing and believing in a future for yourself that maybe you wouldn't normally just believe up. So really, it's about using your imagination to imagine best case scenario, to imagine what you really want. And so I remember it like every night I would get home from this job that I totally hated. It was a retail job that was really taxing. All the women were like older and didn't like me. And it was so hard. I like cried every night. I would come home and I would just read those books because that was the thing that gave me hope. So I would read them, I would journal. And I remember journaling out like, I'm going to move to Los Angeles. I see myself living in a beautiful home overlooking the entire city. I have the most gorgeous view, huge balcony. I'm sitting outside every morning drinking my coffee, which felt like an extreme, like, yeah, that's like, it felt to me like, yeah, that's a real far-fetched dream from where you are, like in your parents' basement in Missouri, like working retail for minimum wage, you know? But as I started cultivating this vision of moving to LA, I had this whole vision. I could see it. As I started envisioning that, I started getting really excited about it. So I started saving my money for this. And I remember I would just work that retail job full time. I would save every bit of money that I made there and just save for an entire year until I saved up enough, which was $6,000 to move myself out to Los Angeles. So I remember packing up my little car. I had a little Mitsubishi Eclipse convertible, packed everything into that car and drove out to California to live out this dream. Well, of course, that house wasn't my first home that I found. I had an apartment initially, and I actually moved with my boyfriend, but we quickly broke up. And I remember feeling devastated because there I was also working retail. I wasn't making very much money. I couldn't afford a place on my own without, like having a bunch of roommates or with my boyfriend. So when we broke up, I was devastated. Like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Am I going to have to move back? But I was so committed to staying there. And I remember a friend was like, hey, you could move in with me and my friends. We have a place in the Hollywood Hills and it's like a 10-bedroom home and it's $500 a month. And I'm like, oh, I can afford that, right? Like, it's like, what? So I ended up moving into this home it's like, you consider it Hollywood Hills, Los Feliz area, right by the Griffith Observatory, like dream location. And within a year of that time that I was in my parents' basement writing out that vision, I remember having this moment where I looked out on my balcony up in Hollywood Hills, Los Feliz area, and was like, whoa, this is the vision. It clicked. I was like, this was the vision that I wrote out. Like I wrote about this and I had almost forgotten, but I just remember having it. And I'm like, I did that. Like I manifested this, right? So that's when I really realized the power of manifestation and the power of creating a vision, even if it feels totally wild and like something you couldn't do, right? Like my brain couldn't even conceive that I would ever do that. But I had the courage to write it out and I kind of let it go. It wasn't like I tried to force this or anything like that. But within a year, there I was. And that's when I started really believing in manifestation. And the funny thing was, I would manifest all kinds of things all through my 20s. And I had fun with it, right? I wasn't that serious about it, but I would manifest things. But I always felt like it was really hard to manifest money. That was one area of my life. I'm like, I can manifest all the things, but money. Because I was, again, all through my 20s, living paycheck to paycheck, even for the first couple years of my 30s of growing my coaching business, I was not making the kind of money that I wanted to. And of course, as you know, from my last podcast, if you listen to it, which I highly recommend listening to the one on money, I finally started reprogramming my relationship with money and challenging all those limiting beliefs about money. But I will say this, I don't think I totally tapped into manifestation and all of the practices that go along with manifestation until I reached a point where I had made that 100K, but I was totally burnt out. So I told you, I made that 100K by reprogramming my relationship with money and challenging all the beliefs that I had. But the problem was I was still majorly overworking. I was still striving for it. I still had sort of like this belief that if I make $100,000, I'm going to feel worthy and abundant and successful and all of these things, right? So when I hit 100K, I felt none of those. It was like, okay, so I learned how to create money, but not in the way that I want to, not with the energy that I want to. So it was in that moment that I was just burnt out, and I was seeing my clients are thriving, my clients are having amazing success, feeling better than ever, but here I am totally depleted. And that's when I was like, something's got to change. Something's got to change, because what I was doing during that time was also following everyone else's rules. If someone else who was more successful told me I should do something, I would just do it. I wouldn't even check in with myself. I trusted everyone else above myself. And I think that's what got me really out of alignment, because at that time, I was not happy with my business. I was grateful as can be to be making money coaching, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't feel like I was aligned. Like I didn't feel fulfilled, that fulfilling feeling that I was going for. So in that moment, I was like, something's got to change. It's amazing that I can make money. But I set another goal the next year and I decided, okay, I want to make 100K again, but from a completely different energy. I want to be working about a third of the time that I did the year before. I wanted to have time for play and fun. And I wanted to do business in a way that felt more aligned to me. It felt more like what I really wanted to do and what I could see for myself. I wanted to trust my intuition over other people's opinions and be able to check in with myself. And that's when that year I decided, okay, I'm going to start infusing manifestation into my business, because as I shared, I was using it in every other area of my life, but for some reason I totally forgot that, hey, you can use it in business. You can use it with money, right? Like create the vision of what you really, really want, and then use your practices that I've used for so many other things all throughout my 20s to manifest. So I decided that second year I was going to make 100K, but from a different energy, and using manifestation and infusing spirituality and really like all of me, because I felt like that was a huge part of me that I was just kind of like separating. It was like, okay, let me get into business and then let me go every morning and meditate and do my spiritual practices. And I'm like, wait a minute, what if I infuse this all together and make this a more holistic creation, right? So that is what I did. And I went on a year experiment of like, what if I could use manifestation in business? And what do you know, my friends? It worked. Manifestation, in fact, does work for business too, and with money. So that year, I worked about 1/3 of what I worked the previous years. I went to the beach consistently. I took time for myself. I got present. I gave myself space to be more creative. And therefore, I enjoyed it so much more when I was working. I stopped trying to force it. I stopped caring so much about making money. And instead, I really focused on doing what I loved. And of course, just believing that I'm going to make money doing what I love. And I took on this belief that like, if I feel balanced, I will make just as much money, if not more, from feeling balanced and doing things that light me up and things that are fun. And I started really leaning back and trusting in the universe, trusting that no matter what, I'm always okay. This isn't a race. I'm not striving for anything. The most important thing, like, I would just really wanted alignment. I wanted to feel like myself and feel like my business was in alignment with me and was just fully me. And with that, of course, I ended up making $145,000, working about a third of the time, and felt way more like myself and actually appreciated the abundance, because I had shifted so many things by by infusing this new energy into my business. But what's super fun about it is then the next year, I just continued with all of this and I ended up making $500,000 in my business. So I ended up having a quantum leap as I began to infuse all of this energy into my business. And since then, have continued making multiple six figures in my business. And it just feels night and day different. Like, I love showing up for my business. It doesn't feel like something I have to force. It feels like something I just want to show up for, even through the hard parts, because I'm so aligned with it. I love my programs. I love my offers. I love my clients deeply. It's just a joy and it feels like an absolute pleasure to have this business. And I couldn't have even imagined that just a few years ago when my business felt like it was something I had to do to make money, had to do to be worthy and to prove myself. That energy was not good. It didn't drive anything positive. Of course, it was always amazing having a business. I love being an entrepreneur, but the energy that you use to create from matters. It matters. So if there's nothing else you take away from this podcast, think about that. What is the energy that you are using to create in your business or in your life or whatever it is you're manifesting or creating? What is the energy behind it? That is huge. That's a part of what I call manifestation, right? So, of course, now I want to dive into manifestation and what it is, how you can practice it, how I see it. So I'll give you kind of my overview of how I see manifestation. All right. So manifestation is simply the process of creation. It's an idea that starts with a thought and comes to life in form, right? Thoughts become things. If you think about it, anything created by humankind started with a thought. Every car, every invention, every building all started with an idea, a vision of creating something new. That's manifestation. It's not an out there thing. We're all manifesting all the time. We're creators as humans. That's what we're meant to do. We are meant to create. So that's how I see manifestation is truly just the process of creation. And I like to think of this in the 3D sense, in the sense of how we were taught creation happens. But then I also want to teach you about a couple of the energetic things that you can do to kind of align yourself and move into a more of like an attractor role where you're not feeling like you have to do everything on your own all the time. You can kind of lean back and surrender and learn how to get into alignment and also attract. And I think manifestation is that balance between the masculine doing and the feminine receiving, trusting, leaning back, believing. We have to have both of these. It's not one or the other. When I say masculine and feminine, I don't mean male or female. I mean the different energetic parts of us. There's that masculine part that is productive, that goes out and does things and takes action and commits to it and stays with it and puts energy and effort into things. And then there's that feminine side that trusts in the universe and is willing to receive and lean back and get into this energetic state where we become attractors. And I think balancing both of those and knowing where you need to lean more fully into one or the other is really helpful in the manifestation/creation process. Okay, so let's talk about what is the 3D way of manifesting that we've all been taught. This is how you create. Well, first, of course, it does always start with a thought or idea. We have to have a vision of something that we want to create. We can't just like create something without the idea of it first. So it always starts with the thought or idea. Like, I want to move. I want to create this piece of art. I would love to whatever it is that you're manifesting, create a business. I want to make 100K. It always starts with an idea. You have the thought, And then in the 3D sense, you basically come up with an idealized plan to execute that. You come up with ideas. You sort of come up with a strategy of what you might do to execute it. Then you simply start taking action on that plan one step at a time. One step at a time, you take the first step, you evaluate, then you see, like, oh, is it going according to plan? Do I need to readjust? You just keep going, right? And you keep going and keep going and keep going until it is created here in form. That's kind of how we were taught things are created, businesses are created, is just we just go do the thing, we make a plan, we keep going until it happens. And of course, that's part of the manifestation process. But what we are often not taught or we don't tune into enough is the feminine side, which is the more energetic side, the part of us that is co creating with the universe and not only going out there and doing the thing, making it happen, pushing, 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 but we are also attracting. Right? We're attracting things in. And I want to talk about some of the things that you can do to what I consider sometimes it's accelerating the manifestation process by tapping into these manifestation, intuitive, feminine superpowers that we all hold. And it doesn't matter what your gender is, we all have a balance of masculine and feminine. So if you tend to be a doer and someone who does hustle for results, this may be your opportunity to lean back and lean into some of these practices. Here they are. They're less traditional in terms of the creation process. Okay, so number one, create the dream. Get really specific about what it looks like, what it feels like, what it's like to have it. Imagine it as if it's already here. Try not to see it in the future. Try to live into it as if it's already here. This puts you in an energy of having it. You are reorganizing all of the cells in your brain and the neural pathways to become someone who already has it, who I like to call it is an energetic match to that thing. If you can see it as done, feel it as done, what would it feel like to have it? Go to that place. So, for example, when I shared about how the first time I really intentionally manifested something was this home in LA that I felt like a wild out there dream. And when I wrote about it as if it was already done, as if it was already happening. I wrote about it as if it were already here, like in the present tense of that future. So doing that can be so helpful. Get yourself into the space of starting to feel like it's happening, like it's done, like it's here, and starting to memorize those emotions. When you think of law of attraction is like attracts like. So when you're already in that energy and you're thinking like the person that has it, you're feeling like the person that has it, you're acting like the person that has it, it's automatically going to help to attract that thing to you, right? And one of my favorite quotes, it's from the Bible. And I'm going to tell you right here, right now, all of the greatest spiritual masters, I take influence from all of them, whether it's Jesus, whether it's the Buddha, doesn't matter. I love, like, I think that's one of the great things about religion is that you can take influence. If you have one specific religion, you can see how manifestation plays a part in that. But for me, I like to learn from all of the greatest spiritual masters because I really see that all of them are teaching something very similar. It's just in different language or in their own way. But one of my favorite quotes about manifestation is actually from Jesus, and it's in the Bible. I think Jesus was one of the ultimate manifestors. He said, "Whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." He didn't say, believe that you will have it in the future. He said, believe that you have received it, have already received it, and it will be yours. So feel as if it's done. It is happening. right? That energy is so, so powerful. And you can practice this through visualization. You can practice this through journaling. There's so many different ways where you can just imagine it. Like I used to imagine whenever I was manifesting $500,000 in my business, I imagined my 500K self often. I thought about her all the time. I'm like, how does she think? How would she do this? Right? How would she, what decision would she make right here? How does she dress? How does she show up? How does she follow her schedule or not follow her schedule? Right? Like, what's different about, I was thinking about the 145,000, CEO versus the $500,000 CEO. And I got really curious and I started acting as if I were the $500,000 CEO before I was her. And the way that I was able to do that is because I got really crystal clear on that dream and who that version of me was, what it looked like, what it felt like, how I acted, right? And I did that consistently. So then, like step 2 is you start acting like them now before you're even them. All right? We call this becoming an energetic match. All right. Another thing that I would recommend is try not to get stuck into the hows. When I say the hows, how could it happen? Oh no, I set this intention, I set this dream, I need to figure it all out. You don't. You couldn't possibly know how it's going to happen. Of course, you can lean into that masculine and you can decide on a strategy or a plan. It's not ever going to go exactly like that plan, but if it gives you some structure and something to lean into, by all means, go for it. But the way that we manifest is that in each moment, when we think about that thing that we're moving towards, we think, what is my next step? That is one of the most powerful questions you can ask your intuition. What is the next step? What's the next small step that I need to take? What can I do today to get closer to this? That is so powerful. And then give your all to just that one next step. Manifestations happen one step at a time. We're guided one step at a time. We're not usually given the entire plan all at once because that's super overwhelming. We're usually given, this is the next step. This is the next focus. And it might not just be a step this day, but like, for example, for me this year, I was like, my intuition was like, your next step is to start this podcast and to start ads. Those two things, give that your all, right? And so for me, that's been my focus. I've just been focusing on this is my next step. All right. And I give it my all and I do it. So ask yourself that often, especially if you're getting really stuck into like, how is this going to happen? How is it all going to unfold? Oh no, blah, 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 right? The brain, doing brain things. Say, just come back to that one thing. No, okay, I just need to know the next step. And what is that? And then when you hear an idea, just trust it. Take the action. Your brain might object to it. Just take action courageously. That's another part of the manifestation process. You cannot give into your fears. You cannot give into all of those objections that your brain has. You have to start leaning into trust and trusting the process, trusting your intuition, trusting those hunches, and just going for it, right? And not having such a huge fear of failure. It's like just leaning in. Because no matter what, if you take the next step, it's going to guide you to the next step, right? Whether it's like, oh, that wasn't exactly it, but let me redirect, right? We learn through action. We really do. You get clarity through action. You can't sit around and wait for it. So consistently move towards it one step at a time. Another thing that's extremely helpful if you want to attract in your business or attract in terms of manifestation is clean up any of the beliefs that tell you you can't have it, you shouldn't want it, you're not enough for it, you're not ready, any of the fears of what others are going to think of you if you have it. Like, you gotta be willing to start becoming aware of the thoughts that you think about this thing and get really curious. And when you see them, if it's something that's conflicting with that being possible for you, or that being totally safe, it's time to question that thought. You're going to have to challenge it. And that's why I truly believe wholeheartedly that coaching is one of the most powerful ways to practice manifestation. Having a coach, having somebody who can help you see the thoughts that are in the way and help you challenge them, help you see a new perspective. This is why I bring coaching into every program I have. Because if I just put a course out there for you on manifestation, you could totally dive into all of the info and soak it up. But if you have blind spots, if you have money blocks, if you have business blocks, any thoughts that are in the way for you, it's going to be really hard to move forward. We have to clean up those thoughts, those limiting beliefs that tell us that we can't have it, shouldn't have it, that money's evil, money's bad. You can't attract money while thinking it's this horrible thing. It's just not going to happen. The way that it works, like energetically, is your energy is going to try to protect you. So if you think money is bad, but you're trying to manifest money, your subconscious is going to be like, no, let's not attract money, because deep down, we think it's bad and we think it's wrong and we feel guilty for it. So it's going to be some competing intentions there. So that's why it's so important to work on your mindset consistently as you are manifesting in your business. It's got to be one of the, I'm not even going to say one of the top things. I'm going to say the top things that changed everything for me, that is a consistent priority, that's a consistent investment, is being willing to look at my thoughts, see what's going on up in my brain, and challenge the ones that are really not aligned with where I'm going, right? The next thing that's going to help you attract your manifestations is being willing to feel. All right. When I say be willing to feel, I mean that when you're becoming in that next evolution of yourself, when you're growing, it's going to bring up feelings. It's probably going to bring up some doubt. It's probably going to bring up some insecurity, maybe some inadequacy. There's going to be a part of your brain that's like, we've never done this before. This is scary. Let's stop. And the problem is, a lot of people just listen to that fearful feeling. If they feel fear, they don't move forward. They get sucked into it and don't keep going, right? Versus understanding what's going on. Your brain is just trying to protect you. Our brain wants us surviving, not thriving, right? So our brain is like, wait. We've never done that before. We don't know if we're going to survive doing it. So let's not do it. Let's stay in the cave and just survive, even if we're miserable, even if we're staying stagnant and stuck. As long as we're surviving, it's okay. That's kind of how our primitive brain works. And we just want to understand this in terms of manifestation, because it's important to learn how to process your feelings, how to understand them, how to hold space for them, how to expect fear to come, expect doubt to come whenever you're manifesting a new reality. I'm telling you, me and doubt are best friends. We're besties. I have learned how to feel doubt, how to know that it feels so real in my body and every part of me wants to stop or give up, but that I can just hold space for it. I know what's up. I know that it's just trying to protect me. It doesn't want anything unknown to happen. It doesn't want to move into uncertainty. But for me, I know that moving into uncertainty and expanding and growing is so much more important. So I'm willing to feel it. It's kind of like a growing pain. And it's just a practice of learning how to process your emotions, how to feel them without giving into them. It's knowing that emotions are like weather. They change throughout the month. They change throughout the day. One of my favorite thoughts is I'm going to feel better tomorrow, or I'm going to feel better later. I practice that all the time because my emotions fluctuate. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to manifestation is thinking you have to feel positive all of the time. That is not true. That is not human. As humans, we're meant to feel the full spectrum of human emotions. It's totally fine. And if you think about it, anyone who has manifested amazing things, even things that you want, I guarantee felt human emotions, right? It's just learning how to not let them scare you and stop you and make you go hide in a cave. You've got to learn to be with them. And if that's hard for you, having support can be so helpful in terms of coaching, therapy, anything, breath work, any kind of practitioner who can help you hold space for it, but like almost be someone there holding your hand saying, it's going to be okay. I promise. I know it doesn't feel like it is, but it is. That's been key for me. Absolutely key. You don't have to do it alone. All right. Because when you're manifesting, you're expanding and you're growing, and it can feel uncomfortable. This leads me to the last of my recommendations in terms of manifesting. Enjoy the journey. That is huge. This is a big part of my program that I teach as one of the foundations of the manifestation process is don't make there in terms of where your manifestation is once it's done. Don't make there better than here. And what I mean by that is don't tell yourself it's going to be better in the future. It's going to be better once I have this. Once I have more money, I'll be happier. Once I have a bigger business, I'm going to feel successful and I'm going to start talking kindly to myself. No, my friends, not true. If you don't learn how to do those things now, you're going to have more money and you'll have a bigger business, but you are not going to know how to feel abundant. You're not going to know how to talk kindly to yourself. Those are internal processes that nothing in the outside world can give you. So important that you're not so attached to your manifestation thinking life is going to be so much better when I have it. It's so not true. Your life is so awesome now, right? Or at least part of your life is awesome. Just like any life, there are parts of life that are awesome and there's parts of life that are challenging. It's a mixture. We're humans, right? But it's going to be the same once you're there. There's going to be parts of life that are awesome. And then there's going to be parts of life that are really challenging because we're humans. And that's like that's our experience, right? So I wouldn't attach to thinking that it's going to be so much better once I get there. The opportunity is how can I enjoy today? How can I be fully present today? How can I like where I am today and learn to love my life now and stop reaching for achievements to be happy? Because it just doesn't work. Like I said, I did that the first 100K of my business. I thought once I made $100,000, I'm going to feel successful, worthy, happy, and it didn't work. And then it was more depressing because I'm like, I did this thing. I thought I would feel this way and I don't. But I learned that I had to do that inner work myself. I had to learn to see myself as successful, to identify as someone who is successful, to be kind to myself and learn how to enjoy this moment. You don't have to wait. And I would recommend not waiting. So that's what I have for you on manifestation. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I will see you next week for business. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope this episode is something that you'll be able to add to your manifestation toolbox to come back to when you need a little extra motivation. If you like what you've heard today and want to take it deeper, you've got to come check out my signature coaching program, the Money Manifestation Movement. It's the place where you'll not only learn manifestation, but you'll begin to live it alongside me and an amazing community of like-minded entrepreneurs doing this work together. Head on over to jamieberman.com to learn more.